Well, good morning, everybody. Just wanted to continue my series on The Secret, a treasure hunt by Byron Preiss. And I'm coming on today basically because I have a solve to present for the Boston location. And would just like to kind of go over what my observations were concerning the location of that particular treasure and its find. As most of us know, the Boston cask was found in pieces during a reconstruction project in a historic area near Cops Terrace, uh, uh, approximately near Langone Park and in Popolo Field. There was a solve presented, and a stone was rewarded to some individuals who came forward to encourage the construction workers to look for the items for the cask and the plexiglass. And this was all explained um, uh, on mysterious writings by a number of people. And I think they might have actually had some attention from a little known TV show, uh, that really just likes to drum up drama and present stuff that may or may not be leading towards discovery of additional casks. But anyway, there was a ceremony held. The illustrator of the book came forward to offer some additional clues in the image pointing to Boston. There was supposedly something spelled out in the cuffs, and the guy just continues to make up information about an image that is probably actually more in line with another location than Boston. But the community seems to want to accept that finding and move on and look for some other treasure locations. But again, if you're not fully convinced that that image and that verse for the solving of the Boston location is appropriate, I encourage you to listen to this presentation. So the exact or closely exact location of the relics of the cask were found in Andrew Popolo Park near home plate, and that's located in Langone Park. Let's say the address is 520 something Commercial Street. So let's look at the location. Aside from the park, you have some landmarks close to the site. The ball field itself, a plaque about a molasses incident, Cops Hill Terrace and Burying Ground, and the old North Church is up above. Now let's look at Joseph A. Langone Jr. He was a first lieutenant in the Massachusetts State Guard. He led a company during the Boston police strike of 1919. He followed his father's footsteps and became an undertaker. He eventually ran the family funeral home in the North End. Now, I want to point out that that might be significant because if you actually look at the image with the lion in it, not the one that is being purported as being the solve, but instead look at image 2, you will see that there are a couple of headstones in the image, and they are the ears of the lion. So remember, Joseph A. Langone Jr., his father was an undertaker, and so was he. And they were both in the North End. In 1927, the Langone Funeral Home handled the funeral of Sacco and Vanzetti, a historic event that drew thousands of mourners, according to the Boston Globe. It was one of the most tremendous funerals of modern times. Now let's look at the lion's eyes. The lion's eyes are weeping. So again, why is the lion crying? Why are those eyes weeping? Now, if you look at the football tier and headstone, that's basically coming from the eye of the, let's just call it the death mask, you'll also see that there's a tombstone below the football shaped eye. It's pretty obvious that that's a grave marker. Now, let's look at Andy Popolo. Popolo grew up in the Jamaica Plain section of Boston. Jamaica Plain. Where do death masks, what countries are they most closely related to? Africa, the Jamaican Plain, places like that. He graduated from the prestigious Boston Latin School before he enrolled in Harvard. He was the starting cornerback of the Crimson during the 1976 season. I think the cornerback location of the home plate was actually where it might have been found, but we really don't know. He was planning on attending medical school, and I'm going to emphasize he was planning to attend medical school. Popoolo's teammate, Charlie Kay, was approached by a prostitute while he was sitting in a van. Reaching into the van, the prostitute distracted Kay by fondling him and then stole his wallet. As the prostitute ran away, Populo pursued her. Three men came to the aid of the woman, and the insulting altercation, one of the men stabbed Populo. Derived of oxygen as a result of his injuries, Populo suffered extensive brain damage. Now again, let's go back to the image 2. Let's look at the death mask, and let's look at the forehead section that looks like the continent of Africa, by the way. So anyway, above the eyes is a knife. And the outline of the knife is shoved into Africa, which is basically the forehead of the death mask head. Andrew Populo Field has been a long time home of the Suffolk University softball team. Okay, so if we go down further in the image, we actually have a home plate. That shape is undoubtedly the shape of home plate if you've ever played softball or baseball. But if you look more closely at that, you have two eyes. Well, those eyes are basically designed to be in the same shape as the pitching rubber and the circle around a softball pitcher. And so you have another element there of that being a women's softball field. Okay, if you look more at that particular home plate image, there are three African tribal stripes on the face. Well, those are actually the bocce ball courts that are in Langone Park that are adjacent to the softball field. I think that if you go back to a previous image before the reconstruction, you'll notice that those are the actually the colors of the bocce ball court at the time. Now, another thing is if you actually look at the Suffolk University Boston Shield, it has the same two round circles and a pole in it. And so it's almost an exact striking image of the Suffolk University Boston mascot or logo. And so there's that. If you want to stretch that a little bit further, the home plate shape is somewhat similar to the shield that the Harvard University also has. But you might also notice that in Harvard University shield, there is a olive branch or branch background. And if you go look at the image, there's also that same reference to a garland, if you will, made out of a wood tree. And it's undoubtedly noticeable that there's a scantily clad African-American woman in this image. Not saying that's the lady that approached Charlie Kay, and I'm just saying it could be. That's generally how most women are dressed if they are, let's say, looking for a man's accompaniment for an evening, for one night, if you will. Maybe they were looking for shelter for one night. So again, that might be what you get when you sample the fruit from a poisonous tree. So moving on to the actual flower in the image, the daisy. If you take the daisy and look at the petal shape of the flowers and comparing it to the pears on the north end, you would get the idea that they look like the pears. The other thing is that I think there's actually a picture of a crab coming out of that flower. It's basically the two petals that come together to form the shape, pointing in the direction to the right from the center. And so you've got a Boston crab leg in there too, just just for fun. Or maybe that's a lobster, pincher off a lobster. I don't know, but I think it provides some confirmation. So I was able to find an actual picture of the baseball or softball field and its configuration. The poles that are used for the light standards back in the 1980s and 70s are white. They're not green. I'm sorry. And that photo is readily available. You can see from that photo also the bocce ball courts in the background. You can see the circle shape of the image where the pitcher's mound is drawn on the softball court as well. Okay, next let's look at the area known as Copp's Hill and Burying Ground. The cemetery was founded on February 20th, 1659, and it contains more than 1,200 marked graves, including the remains of various notable Bostonians from the colonial era into the 1850s. On the Snow Hill Street side area, many unmarked graves of African Americans who lived in New Guinea, a community at the foot of the hill. So again, we're talking about cemeteries, we're talking about headstones, we're talking about African Americans. All of these are represented in the image. You might also look at the figure itself. She has a pair of bracelets on. Maybe she's being cuffed for some activity. If you look at her two fingers it would be her right hand, but it would be the left side of the image. They don't really look like fingers. They might look more like, well, anyway, I will just let you determine what they look like. Something related to Boston, obviously. So, again, Robert Newman is one of the two patriots who placed signal lanterns in the steeple of the Old North Church for Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. John Norman is also buried in this cemetery. Major Samuel Shaw, who was another member that is buried there. Phyllis Wheatley, the first published woman of African descent, poet and former slave, and George Worthylake, who was the first keeper of the Boston Light. So those are all in the cemetery there on Copp's Hill. Now, if you actually look at the image of one of the headstones that you can Google a picture of on Copp's Hill, it is a dead ringer. Well, pardon my choice of words there, but it is the exact shape of several of or specifically one of the grave markers on Copp's Hill. The little wave, the three waves in that tier match perfectly with the three waves that are in the actual grave marker that is on Copp's Hill. So there you have an actual visual confirmation from the image that you could go to Copp's Hill and look at that specific headstone because it's right there. Copp's Terrace is an area that was settled by African Americans. We mentioned that earlier. The plaza overlooks Commercial Street at the mouth of the Mystic River. Now let's move down and look a little bit more at Copp's Terrace. If you look at the railing on Copp's Terrace, it is a resemblance exactly to the teeth in the image on home plate. All you need to do is Google an image off of Commercial Street, do a pan view over to the railing, and you will see the triangular shape of that railing. And that railing triangular shape is repeated in the teeth in the home plate image. If you look at the stair step or staircase that comes down from Copp's Hill, that is a single single one that is closest to home plate, you will notice there are 15 steps to go from Cops Terrace to Commercial Street. And again, this is the stairway that is towards the, I believe it will be north part of the terrace, also the part of the terrace that would be closest to home plate across the street on the softball diamond. So again, those teeth are represented in the image as those triangular shapes. It's basically exact triangle that's on the railing. So the Old North Church, if you go look at the Old North Church in the north end, you will notice that at the front door of that church, there is 2 lion heads. They flank both sides of the main door that enters the church. The lions are basically looking at each other, if you will. And so, again, you've got the lion image in the photo itself. And you have in the lion's hair a cross. Well, that's, I mean, I hate to have to explain this, but you have a cross in a lion's hair that is representing a church that has 2 cast lion figures at the main door entryway to the church. Okay, so moving on. There is, if you look at the wings of the figure, the blue part, you have 2 sexy sirens holding lanterns. That's what the silhouette is. That is not a cannon. Sorry, that's not a cannon. That is a lady. It's a sexy little silhouette holding a lantern. And you have the same thing on the other side. You have basically a sexy woman holding a lantern. So again, I did mention the shape of the lion. The lion has this figure in it, and in its forehead, and you have to realize that that's basically a leprechaun Celtic reference. It's pretty simple what that is. But if you go back to the shape of Africa itself, you also have the shape of the African continent right there in the lion's head too. It's also in the little death mask over there, but you have 2 representations of that. Pardon me. Okay, so now let's look at the Great Molasses Flood, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster. Okay, so this occurred on January 15, 1919, and what happened was basically there was an explosion. This molasses poured out of a tank and ran through the streets in that area. Okay, well, if we go back to the image and we look at the little death mask figure, basically it's below the cheek of the lion, whose face is the shape of Africa and whose forehead in the death mask is Africa. You have the shape of a bag of sugar. Well, that bag of sugar is coming from Africa because it's involved in the triangular trade that we're now trying to bring up as a part of this image, and the fact that slaves were brought to the United States as part of the triangular trade. So you have that bulging bag of sugar right there on top of Africa. Well, that just represents the fact that you had the molasses flood. Okay, so if we look then at the item that's being held in the hand, you also have a sugar palm represented there. Basically, that's what a sugar palm looks like. If you split it open, sugar palm actually has leaves, or the inside of a sugar palm looks like the wings of the figure who's wearing wings. Now, I didn't include it in my online presentation on thesecretsolve.wordpress.com. The lady image figure is also strikingly similar to medical, the most common medical symbol, or the most common symbol for medicine. And there's two possibilities here. The one is that Pupulo was studying to be a doctor, and that would bring in the reference of how the legs are crossed and they look like a doctor's basically symbol. But the other thing is, one of the first women to graduate from Harvard with a degree in medicine actually hails from the Boston area and the North End. So I guess the authors could have been making reference to the first African American woman to get a medical degree there. But I honestly think they're referencing the fact that Andy's wings got clipped because he had got involved in a situation where he lost his life. So the other thing that is bulging is the pear. Let's just say it's a sugar pear because that's what it is. And again, a sugar pear might likely be exploding. It's a sugar pear. It's distilled to make alcohol, which ends up pointing to the fact that we had a molasses flood. Okay, so you're probably wondering, well, okay, where's your visual reference that tells me I should be looking to Massachusetts in this particular image? Well, there's actually an upside down Massachusetts map in the white bow. So if you take that area, you actually have your Massachusetts map right there. It shows the outline of Massachusetts. It's upside down. The shape has to be flipped over. But again, if you want to see how that actually works, you can look at it online at my website. All right. So if you accept the fact that image 2 has all of the representations that you need to put together a solve, you look at the verse that was utilized by the people who have said they solved it using a certain verse. And I went through that verse, and it starts out like, if, Xenophone and take 5 steps in the area of direction, a green tower of lights in the middle section, a green tower of lights in the middle section. Those towers were white in 1980, so you can't use those. And near those, we passed the Colosseum with. How far away from the actual find site do you have to go in order to find a Colosseum with metal walls? And besides, this Thucydides and Xenophon, these are military leaders. I'm sorry, but Paul Revere was not a military leader. There is no reference to military leadership in the North End of Boston. These are athletes. These are policemen. Okay, face the water, you're back to the stairs. Hooray! You found some stairs. I can imagine that at almost every single location where Byron secreted a treasure, you will find at least one staircase. And in the case of Montreal, you'll find a big one that goes from Mount Royal up to the actual park where the observatory is. But anyway, face the stairs. Yeah, right. Okay. Feel at home. All the letters are there to see. Hey, home. So that's now home plate, right? And so now, whatever, 18th day, 12th hour. Yeah, we know that's from the poem about Paul Revere, lit by lamplight and truth be free. So what are you saying? You're using the verse to say that these slaves should have been free? I don't understand how lit by lamplight and truth be free fits in at Cops Terrace, but you guys all, some of you seem to like that. So let's actually look at the verse that would match verse 2 perfectly and bring you to a solution at Cops Terrace, Pupulo Field, Langone Park. North End, Boston. So let's use this verse and let's relate it to image 2, and we will get to the exact location of where this thing was. So, at the place where jewels abound, 15 rows down to the ground. Okay, I already pointed this out to you, but it's exactly 15 steps from Cops Terrace to the street, commercial street, that runs by Langone Park. In the middle of 21 from end to end. From end to end is telling you it's the north end. We're actually using part of the location in the description of the verse. In the middle of 21 from end to end. Let's go back to that. So 21 what? 21 people? Okay, well, let's look at a softball game. There are 21 members on the field when the game starts. There are, and you can count players, and you can count 3 umpires. 18 plus 3 is 21. They line up on both baselines of the field as they're introduced. So you introduce the umpires, 3 of them, you introduce the players, 9 aside, starting lineups. There are 21 lined up on the 2 sides, end to end. Only 3 stand watch. Okay, the 3 standing watch are the umpire, the batter, and the catcher. So you have 3 people standing watch at the dig location. The dig location is home plate. So 3 of the 21 are standing watch. Yes, they are, because they are right in close proximity of the actual dig location, which is home plate. The catcher, the batter, and the umpire stand watch. So as the sound of friends fill the afternoon hours, so softball games, college universities, played in the afternoon a lot of times, especially in the 1980s when there's a doubleheader. Here is a sovereign people who build places to shelter. Okay, sovereign people. That means they are individual. They are sovereign. There are 2 teams, each of them sovereign. And they're built palaces to shelter their heads for a night. Yeah, they're going to stay in that dugout for one night for the second game of their doubleheader. So gnomes admire the Fae's delight. The namesakes meeting near this site. Okay, you're talking about a diamond. At a diamond. The namesakes meeting near this site. You're a diamond, and you're located at a ball diamond because you're image 2, which has a diamond in it. So you match the verse perfectly with the actual image and the find location. Not driving all around Boston, Massachusetts, not signaling black hair is a frickin' ball diamond. You have a frickin' home plate right in front of you. If you use image 2, you don't need to make one out of the lion's mane or the character's or a character's hair or whatever. It's right there. So, in summary, by pairing image 2 and the verse together, we have a solve that's in a specific area of Boston. All the clues line up and they're absolutely in proximity of where you can find the treasure. So to wrap up, I just feel sorry for the people that presented their solve, because instead of a lowly jewel that wasn't worth as much money as a diamond, if they would have presented this solve, they would have gotten a diamond. A diamond! I hope you all have a good day. I'm going to show you in an upcoming video the actual location where you can find the image that is purported as being Boston's treasure. Good day, my friends.